Hi, everybody. How are you today? I hope you're well. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on whether you're catching us live or for replays. And if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to Impossible Live. If you're returning, welcome back to Impossible Live. And thanks again for joining us today. Let us know where you're from and ways we can help you, who you'd love to meet as you're expanding and building your networks, or as you're dreaming of building a business, transitioning into a new business. And whether you're interested in meeting that person live or online, love to thank you for joining in and for your really keen and amazing feedback as we've been doing our Impossible Live series. One of the things that I'd love as we're chatting today and taking a deeper dive into today's topic. Today's topic is introverts. And I want to thank many of you who joined me for a poll that we ran last year on this. And I was trying to check in for, in full transparency, for a beta course that I'm working on. I wanted to check to see how many different types of us there were out here as we were reemerging, whether we were introverts, whether we were omniverts, whether we were ambiverts, whether we were extroverts, or whether we were trailblazers. And I'd love to thank you for weighing in on that last poll. One of the cool things about that poll is I'm about to repeat it. Hey, Aries, how are you? Aries, we've been hanging out tough today, and thank you and welcome back and bringing some amazing mental fitness energy in the house. Hey, Della, welcome back. How are you? And I'd love to thank you just for joining us. Let us know too in our chat today, what are some of your gems, your zones of genius, and how people, hey, Joy, welcome, welcome, and where you're from and who you'd love to meet. Because I think that's a really big part of I'm Possible. It wasn't something that I always felt, and I'm really delighted Joy's here on the background with greetings from DC. Joy and I are childhood friends, and I want to thank you, Joy, for really living up to your name every day and for bringing lots of it into my past, my current, and our world. Hey, Joe, how are you doing? Hi, Carla. And one of the fun things as I'm talking about delightful Joy is she had the most amazing name. I fell in love with her name when she was born. And Joy, don't worry, I'm not dating us. I'm not letting us know, not letting others know how old we are today. But Joy always lived up to her name from the first moment of wrapping a wonderful finger around ours. And I want to just thank you for that. And Joy, really, thank you for joining us. So today, talking about introverts, and this is a poll that I did about a year ago, and I'm actually about to repeat the poll because it's time just to check in and see how we are as we're emerging and reemerging. And Della, check out Joy when you can. This amazing woman. I'm heading actually both of your ways on vacation soon, so let's chit chat about that, and maybe find a way we can all connect. But in this poll, I checked and asked what were different styles as we were networking, what were different styles we had. And I'm an introvert. And one of the interesting things about it, yep, I'm a trained ambivert now, trained years and years and years of training in BNIs and in chambers and in events. And Joy would probably laugh because maybe as a younger person, Joy might have thought I was an extrovert. We kind of sometimes lose that energy or that spark. But as part of our discussion about introverts today, I'd love to tap into something we've explored previously, which is ROE, which I call returns on energies and returns on engagement. And to start there, as we're talking about introverts. So many of us as introverts, and many of us, no matter what our vert is, or whether we're a trailblazer and they broke the mold when they created us, is many of us think in terms of our rules of engagement. It's kind of how we operate, whether we bring them to an office setting, to a professional setting, to a presentation, to a team, to a conference, whether we're bringing those kind of rules of engagement into in person situations, whether we're hanging out in the metaverse or in the multiverse. And we all have that set of rules. They're kind of unseen. They're part of our, I'd call them part of our hidden truths. And we don't necessarily share them with people who we don't know well or people who we've just met. And while we're networking or while we're working day to day, and many as transitioning from working from home to returning to the office to flipping back to experimenting, as now we're the kind of the WFA world, the work from anywhere kind of zone, that as we're doing it, many of us really, we've got some energy leaks that we're really trying to preserve. And it's part of the comfort zones part, that rules of engagement, that's the unseen part. It's part of our hidden truths. We don't normally share them on a first date. We don't necessarily share them with coworkers. We don't necessarily share them with people we don't know and that we're not comfortable with. So I'd love, as we're talking about introverts, to really think of this returns on energies and engagement. How do you define it? And to think of it from the perspective of how often do you pause to recharge your energy? So if we think about it, I mentioned comfort zones. We have them all. We have comfort zones. We've got kind of boundary zones. And as part of being an introvert, I always really had to explore, and I'm grateful for amazing clients and strategic alliances and collaborators for sharing that our energy leaks are a really big part of it. Our comfort zones. It's whether we have a boundary or not. And that part for introverts, it could be language, how someone asks us a question, whether they're patient when they're waiting for an answer, whether they're demanding, whether their tone has changed. And it could also have to do with the pace. Somebody's asking you rapid fire questions in a certain tone. They're looking for information. Are they a boss? Are they a coworker? Are they on a project that you're working on? Are they a potential client? There's a difference in that pace. And for introverts, sometimes that internal part, that hidden truth part, we can get stuck a little bit in analysis paralysis. And the analysis paralysis part just means maybe we're looking at stuff from a lot of different angles. We're taking it in. We're not necessarily sure. Are we up to answering the question? Are we not up to answering the question? One of the questions I appreciate having today in a strategic alliance who's known me for 30 years, who's never seen me in a hat, is like, Mel, what's with you in that hat? You want to know more about this hat? Check out Trust Yourself Implicitly. I talk about my Relay for Life hat and family more about it. But this hat is my reminder today to, even though I'm the introvert, to not get stuck in analysis paralysis as we're talking. Analysis paralysis for an introvert, or when you're approaching an introvert in a networking situation, can kind of be like that bare version of the love story theme. Where do I begin? And one of the other things, as we're pausing to recharge energy, we may need time and space to think, to take a sip before we answer a question, to think before moving on to a new train of thought, or if you're in a networking situation or at a conference, maybe you're on a little bit of overload from, the learning to earn, or, it's a deep team training. And that part about the pause part, about building it in, I'm really grateful to people for sharing their really keen insights and talking about different ways that maybe we do recharge. We've talked about it before in terms of how we revitalize. But one of the things I'd love to talk to you about is there are different types of energy. Some personalities come on much stronger than others. They're demanding, they're powerful, they're intimidating sometimes. And sometimes you have that soft, quiet energy. People like to call it masculine energy or feminine energy. And I think we all have a different blend of those, of how we show up at times. But that pause part, that taking a breath part, and the reminder to just slow down, I really think is just a real big key. So I'd love to know ways that you pause as you're recharging. And also, we were talking before about learning. And I think sometimes as introverts, many of us are social learners. We're learning in groups. And other times we're a solitary learner. We're kind of taking it offline to kind of digest. Or sometimes we're not always the person who raises their hand to ask the question. We're not always the person who will interrupt a presenter, interrupt a train of thought. Sometimes we're trying to figure out what's next. And I'd encourage you, as we're in situations where the others are asking more questions of us, or as they're exploring more perspectives, to really make that time and really add the timing part to your outreach as well as to your intake. So you're pausing to recharge, you're pausing to analyze, you're pausing to slow down, you're pausing to acknowledge we're all learning at different paces and different rates. And one of the things, as we're talking about it, I'm starting to think of a new hashtag with relation to this that explores energy based on some really great feedback I got from somebody who's in our group coaching program. And in a couple of group coaching programs, and I just started kicking off a couple of my own, some new ones. So I'm really delighted to have the opportunity that while we're building relationships, those group settings are really changing our encounters. They're changing. A good example is they're changing how we look at providing information, collecting information, asking for information. And one of my mentors from way back when is in financial services. And he used to say that I needed to change how I ask questions. And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, ask a question and stop. Ask a question." And I appreciated his advice as an introvert. It took me a while to figure out what he meant. He was in financial services trying to get people to invest, whether they're giving him retirement savings, or they're talking to him about succession plans, or they're maybe investigating how to provide, or invest in college funding. Maybe it's a new parent trying to figure out how to set up a new plan to hopefully finance college or big dreams for their children or their expanding family. And he asked the question when he was sitting down with somebody, he had to ask them for their social security number. And he'd ask for the social security number. And I'd laugh because I became one of his clients. And I said, "How long did you ever have to wait for an answer?" And I think of this as we're talking about pausing to recharge. He said he asked someone for their social security number. And I asked him, "What's the longest you waited?" He said 4 minutes. I said, 4 minutes? He said, "What'd you do?" He says, "Deep cleansing breaths." He says, "I didn't move. I never took my eyes off the person I was speaking with, they knew they had my full attention. They knew that I wasn't interrupting their thought process. They knew that I was going to wait for the answer. And I'd wait as long as it took for them to decide whether they wanted to hire me or not. He says, I knew it was internal. And I thought this was kind of cool because you think about sometimes you're in a meeting and somebody's asking your opinion and they're looking for like a quick intake, or it's a client. They have a question about your background or how to do something. And we're really thinking of how to approach it. But he said that almost 4-minute wait took some time for him to really explore their style. He said he wasn't an introvert, but he knew that they were. And he knew that if this person was going to decide to become his client, that besides him taking great care of them, he was going to ask them other questions that they didn't want to answer. And this one was the easiest: social security number. It's an identification number. It's the beginning of the application. But he said in the process of waiting for that answer, he learned to just pause, give themselves a chance to collect themselves, give them a chance to decide, am I signing up for this gentleman or am I telling him he's not a great fit for me? Is he going to work with me or not? And think about that. It happens whether we're at networking events. It happens in life. It happens with team members. Think of all the wonderful people who have proposed recently, who are excited about getting married or starting out on new journeys. And the real reminder to never, no matter what our style is, and especially as an introvert, to be really, really careful when asking others a question, to not demand an answer. It's the reminder, and I really appreciated it, as he shared with me, was that we're all coming at this from different angles. We've discussed before about different intersections and different approaches, different backgrounds. We have different styles. We have different goals. And that energy part, I love it because I was speaking with one of my amazing coaches before, and I loved it because we were talking about the changes in energy as people are sharing information, some cases asking gently to ask a question. But that part, as we're saying, with introverts, and I really appreciate one of my amazing strategic alliances, and my PQ godfather is in the house, and he's trying to tell me I'm a wise woman. I'm so not a wise woman. Joy knows me when I was a kid. I was just that curious teacher's kid. That curious teacher's kid who just wanted to show up and help others, who wanted to explore, in a really safe place. And I'm able to acknowledge now I'm an introvert. And people don't believe it because occasionally the trained ambivert comes out and she can have some very different energy. But in closing today, that rules of engagement part that we really don't necessarily share with others may be the way to opening and expanding our relationship. Like Aries and Phil, who are in the audience, and Joy, who I have not seen in decades and would love to see soon. It's the reminder: show up as we are when we can. Show up with cool energy, but as introverts, and no matter what our style is, really respect others' comfort zones, give them a chance to pause and breathe and step into it. Phil, we're going to continue this discussion. I am going to say, Phil, my PQ godfather, that you are always right. So I'm going to say thank you. So really, our tips for introverts and engaging: think about the returns on engagement and energy, that ROE part. Think about our comfort zones. Think about our energy leaks. Think about whether it's a timing thing. Do you need to pause to recharge? Do you need to pause to give the other person in the conversation or in the outreach a chance just to digest what's happening? And really, as we're continuing these discussions, think about the hidden truths. Some of them we're not always comfortable sharing. And think about how we learn. What's our style? What's the style of the person that we're talking to? And hey, 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 I love this as an atta girl. And I'm going to say, Carla, today, Carla says she's turning over the new leaf. As an introvert, I'm showing up. That's it. Breathe deeply. I used to jokingly say, hold your nose and jump into the pool. But hey, make sure you got your oxygen mask off first if you're on a plane or you're skydiving. And as we always say, in closing, take your time, be safe, stay well, stay inspired, stay in touch. And thanks again for joining us for another Impossible Live. And I appreciate you, and I hope you have a magnificent day. Take great care. Be well. Stay safe.